Wiggle rot, you elf! May the Lord of Pestilence turn your guts to slime!
Man, this game is awful. Hello and welcome to the dungeon. My name is Dan, and in today's video we've been playing a lot of Warhammer Chaosbane. So, I may have mentioned this in a previous video, but Games Workshop have licensed their IP to various video game companies to make various video games based on their work, and Warhammer Chaosbane is the latest of that. This is not Warhammer 40k, so you won't see any Space Marines here, no Orcs, no Tyranids, nothing at all like that. This is going back to where Warhammer first began, in what was later called Warhammer Fantasy, the age of the Empire and the High Elves. A very Tolkien-esque landscape. In fact, it was this game, as opposed to its younger sci-fi sibling, that first got me into miniature wargaming, and for that Warhammer Fantasy will always have a place in my heart. But what about Chaosbane, I hear you cry? Okay, so this video game takes place in a certain time period in Warhammer Fantasy lore. This is the Great War Against Chaos, where the Chaos Warlord Asafar Kul leads a great warband to assault the lands of men, basically the old world, and is stopped at Prague. Now, all I just explained to you is mentioned in the very first opening intro movie. This is some really cool stuff. Lots of Chaos Warriors, lots of various demons attacking the walls, just some great stuff. None of which you really get to play yourself, so sorry about that. This is back in its history. It's kind of like Horus Heresy if you watch my previous video. These are events which happened before the main timeline. And that's weird. Not saying it's a bad thing, but it's weird because at this timeline there isn't some of the staples of Warhammer Fantasy that people have become accustomed to, like battle wizards. None of those yet. The colleges of magic have yet to be established, so yeah, make do without. The plot begins just after Asafar Kul has been slain, and the hero of the hour, a dude called Magnus, is set to become the next emperor and bring peace to the empire, which is nice. But unfortunately, some lady decides to cast a magic spell on him, and he becomes like Sleeping Beauty and trapped in this weird green coffin thing. It's up to you, as one of his 4 battle colleagues, I guess, to try and work out what's going on, find this lady, and stop her from trying to destroy the world, basically. Now this game is very much a looter dungeon crawler, so you have various different tropes to be using. So you've got the dwarf, who is very much melee and just killing, slashing, that kind of thing. Then you've got the elven archer, who is Legolas. Then you've got the high elf mage, who isn't Teclis, although Teclis is involved. He has lots of spells. And finally you've got the human soldier, who has a sword and a big shield. For some reason, Teclis and this witch hunter require you and you alone, although you can invite up to 3 friends, to go on this quest and try to save the world. And as a dungeon crawler, you start at level 1, even though you just defeated a giant chaos horde, and you work with levels, becoming a god of murder and destruction. There's lots of loot to find, lots of gold to gather, and these little pretty gems, which looks like Christmas when you've massacred a whole bunch of guys in one place. It's a dungeon crawler set in the Warhammer Fantasy, is what I'm trying to say. And I dislike it immensely. So in terms of plot structure, this game rips off, for some reason, the original Mario Brothers video game, in that the sorceress is always in a different castle. Basically, there are 4 areas of the world. You're looking for the sorceress, so in the first one you follow the cult's tracks to find a lead cultist who tells you, oh no, she's in Prague. So once you've beaten him, you go off to Prague, do all stuff there, defeat that cultist, that champion, and he's like, oh no, she's in this forest. So you see where I'm going with this. Eventually you do find her, and although there's a little bit of a twist on the finding out of her identity, on the whole it's very unsatisfying, and once it's over, it's like, okay, Now what? But Dan, I hear you cry. What makes a nice lady like that turn to the dark arts? Well, I'll tell you. Spoilers! So you have 1, 2, 3 seconds before I reveal it. It's not too major, but anyway. Okay, ready? Yes. Why she turns evil is due to the patriarchy. You see, she wants to go to university and be a scholar, but she's not allowed to because they don't allow women in. So what does she do? She turns to chaos instead. And yeah, basically patriarchy leads to sorceresses turning to evil magic. Who'd have thought it? So we've got a gossamer thin reason for evil and a very linear narrative. What about the other characters? Okay, so there is some light in this game. It's not all bad. The 4 playable characters, the dwarf, the 2 elves and the man, they do have their own personalities, particularly the dwarf. He is a little stereotypical, a little Scottish, but he's all this, I'm a dwarf slayer, and I'm going to kill my way to finding out what's going on here. So a bit stereotypy, but rather fun. I do like the arrogant high elf mage, and his just demeanor looking down upon anyone who's not an elf. Things like, I suppose I should try and save these humans, I guess. So in some ways the voice acting is pretty good. In others, no, really not. Occasionally they use the same voice for different cultists, so you're never sure when one guy gets killed and the one takes his place. The lady playing Alessa, the wood elf archer, sounds like she's one of the developer's mothers who got roped into helping her son out with his project.
Ash and Oak! The enemy is here! I must get to the throne room and protect Magnus!
And Teclis sounds like he's trying to fight the most epic battle of staying awake during this game. That's when you hear their lines. Sometimes you'll see text on screen which they just skip over. And most hilarious, occasionally they get the voice lines mixed up, so one person will say something when it should be someone else. NPCs talking over each other is another fun little game I like to play of who's talking now. And at one point I was playing the game as Lesser the Archer. I had defeated the boss and cued some dialogue, only for it to be the human Empire soldier instead speaking. Okay. I guess someone's mixed up those sound files, and when it comes to characters, there's not that many. In fact, when you go to an area, there's 3 different hubs in the world. You'll have 1 quest giver normally, and maybe 1 extra person if you're lucky. Now, one of the ones I did like was Gorchev in the Khorne arena, and, well, hear him for yourself.
My name is Elontir. I am here on a mission for the Empire.
Is that so? Well, you've come a long way for nothing, Elf. Take your wizard and your damn witch hunters and go home. There's nothing for you in Prague. Red Axe and his warband have seen to that.
You know, competent voice acting, sounds like he's really trying, and I appreciate the fake Russian accent there. Story-wise, this game is poor, but really that's the least of this game's problems. Let's talk about the general gameplay. So this is a hack and slash dungeon crawler, and for the most part it's quite competent. It has a good range of skills. I will give that for it as something positive. Every character has various different skills they can upgrade and select in their loadout, and a lot of these are quite fun. For the dwarf, you've got slamming to the ground and hacking things to death with 2 axes, or throwing a chain and moving quickly across the area. The archer can fire multiple arrows in a cone at once, and she can also create these 2 or 3 little chains flailing around her like some kind of chainsaw. The soldier is good at defense and using his shield to prevent damage as well as knocking enemies away and making them stunned, but my favourite in terms of the skills has to go to the elven mage. This guy can make lightning, all kinds of fireballs, teleportation, and my favourite feature is that he can create some kind of magical energy thing, but you can actually control it, so you can use it as if it was a second character moving around and doing damage across anything it comes into contact with. That is a nice little feature. It is a bit tricky controlling both your character and the magic spell at the same time, so practice is required. And all of these spells can become upgraded, and at times it is really a choice as to which ones to use. Even a choice between which upgrade, since sometimes the more developed ones aren't as good in some ways than the previous one, so sometimes you'll want to have the basic or the intermediate version as opposed to the mastered. You level up, you lock new skills as well as new points you can allocate to things like passive abilities. Each character has their own nice little tree as to where they can allocate these points to, so if they want some more health, if they want to do a bit more damage, if they want to try and lock a new passive ability, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Creating a loadout for your character and then going into a dungeon to smack some cultists is probably the best part of this title. And in long periods of doing so, you can even get into like a zen-like trance as you're doing it. It might even be a good title for listening to podcasts or something in the background, which I guess speaks more about this game's lack of story and good audio work than anything else really. So I'll give it a point on that. Now when you're going through dungeons, you will find loot, which is great because it's a looter slasher effectively, as well as gold. Here is a huge misstep. You see, when you get this gold, what would you expect you to do with gold in a video game? If your first answer was go to a store and buy something, yes, that's what I thought as well. Not in this one. Warhammer Chaosbane does not have stores. It has a collector's guild where you can go and get your stuff sold, because obviously you want to clear your inventory for better stuff later down the road, but you can't buy a single piece of equipment at all, period. And I've played this game through to the end of the dwarf. I've played it in all the other characters to see what they're like. There is no function in this game to spend your gold on equipment. But surely you can spend your gold on something in this game. Yes, two things. One, during a dungeon, if you die, then you can revive yourself for 10% of your gold, which means your gold really has no value, because as long as you have 10 pieces of gold and resurrecting costs 1 gold, you can always do it, and you will have a lot more than 10 pieces of gold throughout this game. If you don't, then you probably really suck and should try a different game completely. And better yet, even if you didn't want to spend your gold, you could use your gems instead, so there's not really much harm at all in dying during a game. Oh, and in boss battles, there's no penalty at all, so keep on resurrecting as much as you like. The second reason you'd have gold for is for going on relic quests. This is a function that you can only unlock once you have beaten the game. So for the first 10 plus hours you're playing it, you won't be going on any relic quests. Once you do, you spend so much, say 1,000 to whatever, and you go on a quest with lots of high price loot at the end. Okay, you might say, well surely you're spending loot on equipment then. Yes, equipment that you don't know what is, or how good it is, or you might lose if you can't beat the map. So yes, gold in this game is practically useless, and if I wasn't such a hoarder, I should have ignored it. As a result, I have a King's Fortune in my playthrough, which is shared amongst all your characters for some reason, and I don't really have anything to spend it on at all, apart from occasional relic quests. Moving on, let's talk about enemy variety. So this game on the Steam page, I'm playing this on PC on Steam, mentions 70 different enemies in this game. That statement is misleading because this is one of those titles that likes to do a lot of palette swaps. Cultists and Ungors. You'll be seeing a lot of cultists and Ungors throughout the entirety of this game. Ungors, in case you're not familiar, are these little skinny goat men. You'll see them in pretty much the first level, and they'll be there right until the end. Never mind that when you first started, compared to when you ended, you're about 10 or 15 times more powerful. Doesn't matter, you're still fighting cultists and Ungors. for the mortal adversaries. When it comes to the demonic ones, and I will say this, it's nice that all 4 gods get good representation. Normally in a lot of Warhammer video games, it's normally Nurgle and Khorne, occasionally a bit of Tzeentch as well. This time Slaanesh gets some love, and there's plenty of demonettes and flamers to go around. In fact, this covers most of the demons you'll ever come across in a Warhammer Fantasy / 40k codex. So you have the Bloodletters, Nurglings, Plague Bearers, Horrors of various kinds, Blood Crushers, Fleshhound, lots of different demonic bastards. And it's cool fighting them. What about the first time? After a while, and these big, scary, unholy creatures of chaos, which normally in the fiction inspire a lot of fear, dread, and pant-wetting, gets very samey. I would have expected, in a game like this, to have a lot more mortal enemies, a lot more types of cultists and other things, and I'll get to other things in a moment, and less demons, because once you kill 4 or 5 demons in a row, they don't really have the same kind of effect anymore. After those you have some sub-bosses, which includes the Mutalith Vortex Beast, which is this weird chaosy thing with lots of energy and different attacks like that, and a Javaslith, which is also another mutated chaos thing with energy attacks and other stuff. Basically it's the same creature with a slightly different head swap. You've got a giant spawn of the various chaos god it belongs to with different attack patterns, but on the whole mainly the same. And after that you have the 4 bosses of the game, a greater demon of each god, and these battles were in themselves, each one, quite interesting. A bit of a puzzle factor in it, since a lot of them were invulnerable in certain ways and you had to work out how best to get at them. Timing was quite important, particularly against the greater unclean one. And against Tzeentch it was quite good because the giant birdie thing would throw up various copies of itself and you had to work out which one was the real one. Quite thematic, I will say, for them. But considering this is called Chaosbane, it is missing a huge amount of enemy variety in terms of more kind of like standard human enemies. There are no Chaos Warriors in this game, apart from the drawings you see in the intro movie of Asatharkul's Horde. There aren't any of these big burly guys with horned helmets. No Marauders either. There's a guy called Scaling who you come across, and Scalings are Marauders, but there are no actual big burly barbarian guys called Marauders in this game. Nothing at all like that. It's cultists and ungors. As for other beastmen, there's no gors, the big burlier kind. There's no minotaurs at all. That is bullshit. Some of the really cool, iconic chaos stuff just isn't here. There isn't a single whisker of a Skaven. Even the fact that you spend 90% of the time in the first area, in sewers, not one single ratman. No Chaos Ogres, no Chaos Trolls, no Chaos Dragon Ogres, no Shaggoths. Anything cool like that, just not in here. I guess I should appreciate the fact that they have a Javaslith, but I want my Gors and my Chariots and my Doom Bulls. So yes, a lot of enemy repetition in this one, which makes me think, if 10,000 cultists couldn't work previously, what makes you think 10,000 cultists will work again at the end of the game? Whilst on the subject of repetition, let's talk about maps in this game. You see, there isn't that many, and they do repeat themselves quite often. I hope you like sewers full of Nurglings, because you'll be seeing a heck of a lot in the first area. I hope you like blood-drenched streets in the second area, because, you guessed it, you'll be seeing a lot of them. Snowy Forest check, and the weird Tzeentchy surreal warp, you've got that as well. Now, a lot of these are pretty initially when I first saw them, but when you're playing the 4th or 5th sewer mission in a row, it starts to become very tedious. And these aren't particularly open areas in terms of the layout. They're very narrow, lots of corridors with maybe a small clearing or two full of bigger enemies. Once you've cleared it, it's on to the next set of corridors and clearings. It's very hard to get lost in these games. Basically, from start to finish, you're clearing out enemies. And for some reason, you can't exit the map the way you came in. You have to find the exit. Again, video game logic. The Tzeentch and Slanesh levels are pretty cool in their own right. I do like the ancient elven temple, very pretty, lots of shimmery effects, and I do like knocking bad guys off bridges, but enough is enough. And when you finish this game, as I mentioned before, there's not a whole lot to do. You can go on relic quests, or you can do boss rushes, or go into an area called invasions and just fight all the enemies like a normal version of the game. Occasionally there'll be various encounters and random stuff happening, such as survive a teleporting horde or kill a very powerful enemy, but on the whole it's more and more of the same. Musically, I wasn't impressed either when I'm listening to the loading screen music, because of course the loading screen is 4 minutes long. I hear a lot of weird male chanting. Okay, I guess that's kind of Warhammery, but none of the tracks really stood out at all. Nothing really impressed me, with the possible exception of maybe the hub music in the Kislev area, which was all kind of sad violins to show the ravages of war and desolation which occurred to the Kislevites. The animations of this game are quite smooth and crisp. I particularly like how the demonettes twirl around like ballerinas and the flesh hounds bound at you like real animals, but again, once you've seen it 100 times, it all starts to lose its potency. I think this game would have done better with fewer but more dangerous enemies. Now, as you can expect, you can play this game multiplayer. There's no competitive function in this, it's all co-op. And the biggest thing regarding this is there's no couch co-op. This, I think, is a huge missed opportunity, because sometimes some people aren't going to have friends who also have a copy of this game. One person with one copy and multiple controllers should be able to have a nice little party at their house on one screen. Yes, you can invite your Steam friends, but good luck persuading them to buy this piece of shit, and you can play with randoms. But considering the game doesn't really factor in more people, as in it doesn't really change enemies, you can just wander off and do your own thing, it really doesn't make a difference. Yes, it'll be more fun with more people, but you can say the same thing about any video game ever. So yes, split screen would have been a good feature to have, but not this time. If you want a better experience for this, then there are a bunch of other titles to try, such as the Gauntlet remake, Diablo 3, even the PS2 versions of Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance. I love those games, and I would rather play any of those, even though they're 15 years old or more compared to this. But all that I've said so far in this video, all the crap I've given it, really pales to the biggest problem this game has completely, in that it's broken. Performance wise, this is a piece of shit so bad not even Grandfather Nurgle could love. Several times I've tried to launch a game and it just froze and kicked me out. That happened as well when I was playing online with someone, it just ended for whatever reason. What I find particularly hilarious is when you're trying to load your character and it takes ages to bring up different parts of loot, so you'll see your character's head and hands, and then finally their armor, and then their weapons, and so on and so forth. It'll stutter if there's too many enemies on screen, which, considering it's a dungeon crawler and there's a lot of hordes, is quite often. Sometimes you'll unlock loot from chests or from enemies, and the loot will fall onto a lower platform, so you gotta go down and collect it, and sometimes that loot will fall off into the Nether Realm, and then you'll never find it. Oh yeah, one time I had an unkillable cultist. That was fun, as I was hacking and slashing and nothing was happening. I tried eventually a different range attack and that seemed to work, but for the most part he was broken. And then another time, as you can see on screen, a poor little demonette was stuck at the top of the screen and couldn't seem to interact with me at all. One time I was doing a mission after the main one was over, and I was trying to kill all the enemies in the map. I did, and the map didn't end, as in there wasn't a go back to the beginning section. I just had to come out of it again. It was an experience for that map. I had lost it. So all in all, my time with this game was rather dire. It wasn't too hard at all. I played the game on normal, I finished it, I went back to it on hard and had a good time with that, but on the whole it was an experience that I just was bored through. There was little to no payoff at the end, and all that time I spent in this game, about 30 hours, I'll never get back. Now, this review is my lowest yet so far, and it can enjoy the rating of 2 disembodied heads and hands out of 5. I really could go on with this game as to how when you're doing a map and you have various things you need to do, there's only an indicator when you get close to it, which means why have an indicator at all? The fact that you can bless equipment, but for some reason I wasn't able to do it at all when I was playing the dwarf. Lots of little bugs and just annoyances that all add up. I do not recommend this game unless you can get it really cheap and you have a bunch of friends and you really want to punish yourself. I'd say there are plenty of other games like this which do it a lot better. Even though they're different in a lot of ways, the Vermintide games are far superior, and I think they deserve your time and money over this any day of the week. It's a shame because eventually they'll stop making Warhammer Fantasy video games and switch all to Age of Sigmar. But until then, there are a few good ones out there. Eventually I'll do a video on the top 10 best Warhammer video games. But for now, that's all I've got to say. Next time I'll be doing something completely different. I'll be playing Age of Wonder Planetfall, so I'm looking forward to that one. Anyway, for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.